This is a very exciting part of the program. Um, those of you who were here in 2017 will remember that after a think tank had been set up in 2015, where it was agreed that there is a need to create an economic highway between Africa and Israel, and a think tank was set up which then looked at the feasibility of setting up a chamber of commerce which would distinguish itself from other chambers of commerce that were already in existence. And this culminated in the launch of the Africa-Israeli Chamber of Commerce in 2017. So this is very exciting because this is now 2 years later after the launch of the chamber, where we are able to come back and find out exactly what the progress has been. Because as we know, many chambers of commerce really struggle. And some of them take 6 to 7 years for them to gain traction before you can actually start seeing tangible results. I was sharing with someone that in Botswana there's a Botswana Business, which is the National Chamber of Commerce. It is, I think, nearly 40 years old. But to this day, it still struggles in terms of sustainability. But in this forum, every quarter, the heads of the various sectors meet the president and the line minister. So, I mean, it's a platform that is that important, where every quarter the president and his cabinet meet with captains of industry. But it still struggles to sustain itself, because anything that is subscription-based, I guess, if people don't see the benefit, the uptake is usually not that great. So today we will start off our afternoon with the AICC workshop. This workshop is open to all ALS delegates. We have a couple of very interesting presentations coming up. The first one is from Elad Stav. Elad is a board member of the Africa-Israeli Chamber of Commerce. He is a former trade attaché of the Israeli government to South Africa, and is now back in Israel and is involved in various businesses. So he will be talking about building economic bridges between Israel and Africa using technology and innovation. Then next we have, we call him Uncle Bassi. Uncle Bassi also sits on the board as the international chairman. Uncle Bassi is an engineer by profession. What did I say? Sorry, he is the continental chairman on the board. And he is an engineer by profession, has done a lot of work with the United Nations, and he will be talking about doing business in Africa and what you need to know about doing business in Africa. And then after that, we are expecting a guest from the South Africa Israeli Chamber of Commerce, Marcel Sheyman, who will come and share, because we do work with a number of chambers of commerce, and the South Africa Israeli Chamber of Commerce is one of them, who will come and share as well their experiences, where key learnings that we can take from their journey thus far. And then we will conclude the presentations with a presentation by Vuyela Nyakaza, who is the Corporate Services Director on the AICC board. But here she'll be talking specifically about the Africa Young Entrepreneur Project, which I think was something very, very interesting that we can look forward to. And then we've dedicated the last part of the program to having a Q&A session where you will have an opportunity to ask questions on the various presentations that you're going to hear. Once we conclude the workshop, we will have a tea break, and then after the tea break, we will be having the inaugural international general meeting. So this is our first general meeting as the AICC, and that will be happening after the tea break. Now, that session, unfortunately or fortunately, is closed. It is only for AICC members. If you have not yet joined the AICC but would like to attend the general meeting, there is a registration form that you can fill in and pay a registration fee of $10. You can see Marcel, who is Marcel. Hey, these names are very difficult, you know. Should have been Masejo or Mpo. You can see Christelle over there, and you can get a registration form and pay $10. The registration form will allow you to be able to attend the general meeting, where we will go into details and giving feedback in terms of exactly what the chamber has been doing, and we will go into the details of how do we practicalize many of the wonderful relationships that have been developed between business between chambers of commerce and businesses in Israel and in Africa. So remember, during the tea break, those of you who would like to attend that closed session, please see Christelle and register and give her, there's a registration fee of $10, which will then allow you to access the other meeting, which is after the tea break. All right, to kick off, I'd just like to briefly introduce the members of the AICC board. I'd like to start off with the continental president. I beg your pardon? Oh, so you are international president, not continental president. Okay. So we would start first with I have to listen to the chair. The chair said I must start with you. I have to respect the chair. Starting off with our international president, Pastor Shagan. Please, could you stand, give him a hand. Then we have Uncle Basi, who's seated on there. He is our continental chair. Then Vuyelwa Nyakaza, who is sitting up here as well, our corporate services director. Then Elad Stav, also sitting there. He is our Israeli director. And then the last member of the board is myself, Dumilo Pang, and I am the business development manager. You can applaud. All right, so to start off our session, I'll ask Elad to please come up to give us his presentation, which will be on building economic bridges between Israel and Africa using technology and innovation. Thanks, Elad.
Okay, so the presentation is there. I don't know if you can really see what's written there because of the light. Not really. Anyway, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Israel. I welcome all the delegates, the board. I hope you have a good conference in Israel and you enjoy your stay here. I feel a little bit like the Israeli representative, but I'm not. I'm part of the board and representing myself, not representing the government or anything like that. In the past 3 years, there have been a sense of change and the feel that, that Israel is coming back to Africa. It started with the visits of Prime Minister Netanyahu to several countries in Africa in 2016, and it continued with the opening of 2 new trade offices in Ghana and Kenya, and the recent opening of a new embassy in Rwanda, and that was prepared, you can see the colors, so it was prepared by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to honor that, and they feel that Israel is returning to Africa. There's also a new government decision or resolution to strengthen the activities in the field of international development. In these days, the Prime Minister the Ethiopian Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed Ali, is visiting Israel. And I heard, I'm not sure, but the king, the Zulu king, is visiting Israel in about 2 weeks' time. Without underestimating all these achievements, it reflects more politics moves than tangible economies. However, the interesting question is where are the business opportunities, or where does the business opportunities between Israel and Africa lies? After working 20 years in the continent, I barely have an answer for this question. I can only present my view, one of my views, and my private opinion on what we can do. Now let's see if it works. It does. Okay, in reality, the trade balance between Israel and Africa is extremely low. Israel exports to South Africa actually less than 2% of the total export, which is, for example, it's lower than the total exports, the Israeli export to Vietnam alone. The import from Africa to Israel is even lower. For example, it is lower than the imports from Denmark, the country of Denmark, to Israel. So our challenge at the chamber, or all of us, the businessmen, is to correct the huge potential, and not only in areas of social investment, impact investment, doing business by doing good, but also in real economy and tangible opportunities. From my experience, Israeli entrepreneurs are showing interest in the continent, and they are up to the challenge, but we are looking for partners on the other side. I don't know if you can actually read any of that, but Africa is the smallest one. Israel is still a startup nation, taking the first steps to mature and become a scale-up nation. It means that Israel doesn't have any giant corporate or enterprises, and we don't have a development government international funding facilities. The economy, the Israeli economy, is based on 95% based on SMMEs, actually very similar to anywhere else in the world. The high-tech center is based on about 6,000 technology startups. That's where we are unique. Few Israeli companies along the years in real estate or infrastructure developers have been successful in Africa, like Shikun Binui, Solel Boneh, but not really in the venture capital or high-tech investments. They were too small and too risky to invest in Africa. Israel is actually good and unique with technology and knowledge transfer, but not with building roads, bridges, or power stations, or things like that. Okay, this one is just to show, I'm sure you can't actually read it, how small is the Israeli economy, which is actually similar to the South African ones, and slightly smaller than the Nigerian ones. It's about $350 billion a year. You can find the Israeli one at the bottom right and the South African on the top there, but both are very small in the global terms. Obviously, in Israel, it's divided to less people, so the GDP per capita is much higher. We are aware of the fact that the Africa's immediate challenges are still in the basic infrastructure, like it shows in this chart that was done by, it's called the Global Attitude Survey, done by PO. And you can see that healthcare, education, governance, agriculture, road, bridges, power and water are still the main concerns. This is a survey. And obviously, Africa also needs funding, money, skills, and logistic solutions. However, my belief, and I spoke about it before, I believe in the concept of leapfrogging and the potential for and its potential for Africa. Leapfrogging is, in the context of sustainable development for developing countries, means accelerate development by skipping legacy, inferior, less efficient, more expensive, or more polluting technologies and in industries, and move directly to more advanced ones. A good example, obviously, is the mobile phone technology and solar energy, which are good examples for leapfrog technologies. Africa's large gaps in infrastructure and technology and policies requires innovation, disruptive solutions, and thinking outside of the box. There are technology areas in Africa that Africa can excel and shine. Africa can embrace digital transformation in banking system, insurance, telecommunications, shopping malls, retailing, hospitals, and more, and transform to knowledge-based economy. Obviously, this process will not solve all the infrastructure issues that we mentioned before, but Africa may benefit a lot by adopting these concepts. Here are some examples of potential areas that we might and should invest in, like fintech, digital banking, microinsurance, e-commerce, drone technologies, as well as e-learning, e-health, IoT in agriculture. In some areas, Africa already excel, leading the way, like M-Pesa in Kenya, and the mobile money solutions. This slide shows there are many slides like that, showing the Africa digital economy, this one by 2025. And it shows that e-commerce market is getting very big, and it's driven by countries like South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya. And the young and rising population in Africa, the largest youth population in the world, with a techie approach, could lead the way. The main advantage of adopting new digital technologies is the relatively low cost involved. Typically, we refer to software only, with cloud services and software as services. Software is relatively cheap to develop, transfer, or integrate. As Israeli startups is typically designed to Western economies, we need and we are looking for the African entrepreneurs to localize the solutions with programming skills that are easy to learn in local institutions. In order to develop these initiatives, we need cooperation platforms between Israeli entrepreneurs, African entrepreneurs. We need to promote the establishment of joint innovation centers, accelerators, incubators, use delegations and roundtables. The idea of tech hubs is not strange to Africa. There are already 442 tech hubs in the continent, spread all over the continent. So you can see it on the slide. I want to show you a few examples. Okay, I'll start with this one. One example is a South African startup called Cloudline. The goal of this startup is to reach people that lack access to paved roads and runways with autonomous airships that carry essential goods. It comes to solve the issue of logistics and deliveries in Africa. This is the only startup, or African startup, that is taking part in the Mass Challenge Israel Accelerator. So you can see anything that raises about the physical infrastructure has a good chance to succeed in Africa. I want to show the previous one. Okay. This is also a very interesting initiative by AGRA. AGRA is the Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa. Recently visited Israel to explore possibilities to establish an Israel-Africa Agriculture Innovation Center. It is a pure NGO initiative from both sides, with the Startup Nation Central as the Israeli partner. The purpose of the proposed center would be to develop, together with the African partners, new solutions designed for Africa's smallholder farmers, and determine which Israeli technology would be the most appropriate for Africa's diverse and unique agroecological conditions. So, to summarize, we need to bring together entrepreneurs from both sides and bring them together with academia, VCs, corporate enterprise, investing entities, founders, and key power players from Africa, especially with the goal of exploring opportunities between the continent and the Israeli startup ecosystem, and create a new digital ecosystem in Africa. This slide shows that in Israel, it's actually a full and a whole ecosystem of innovation that includes, if you take out the IDF, the military, it includes all the entities that I've mentioned, including government and academia and startups, VCs, funding, and so on. There is a great deal of interest among Israeli entrepreneurs, as I said. However, they need to cooperate with their counterparts from Africa, as the Israeli entrepreneurs lack the knowledge of the African market needs, the challenges, and the localization process in order to really succeed in the continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elad. I think we can learn something from your presentation besides the content, taking to time. Something which we used to struggle with as a continent. We don't struggle with it anymore. Yes, I hang around with Pastor Sheikh, and so I speak prophetically nowadays. So we don't struggle with time anymore. So thank you very much for that. Please remember, take down any questions, anything that you saw of interest, questions around the ecosystem, etc., especially. Take down those questions, and then you'll be able to ask them when you do the Q&A at the end. I'd just like to acknowledge the arrival of another one of our panelists who I'd like to invite to come and have a seat up here. His name is Mr. Yosef Abramovich, and he will be doing a presentation for us. He was here in 2017, I think, so I think those who were here then will remember him. He will be doing a presentation for us about Power Africa, and he will do that after Uncle Bassi. So up next, please, to talk about doing business in Africa, I'd like to call upon Uncle Bassi.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm asked to speak on challenges of doing business in Africa. But I didn't do it as a conventional paper that I do. I thought I should make it like a discussion paper. So we'll have something to think about. The concept of AICC is not just for the big businesses. In fact, from the smallest to the biggest. When we visited Israel in August, the board visited Israel in August last year, we tried to put, October last year, we tried to put that across to the various chambers and businesses that we met, that quite a number of the businesses we have in Africa are small in terms of capital and the rest, but we don't want to leave them behind. If they can form cooperatives, let them do so. But we want to take the whole gamut and many sectors that can come in. But it's also good to know what challenges we may likely face and prepare ourselves, but not be discouraged by the challenges, some of which we already know, some of which we already talked about. I saw about 4 of them came up in Elad's paper. Well, the point, and I'm going to end it that way, in spite of the challenges, we must make it. In fact, challenges propel us to do good and do better. Is it working? Okay. The enabling environment, government regulations. When you look at the 54 countries in Africa, the environment differs from country to country, and in some big countries, from one section to another. It takes a while to register some companies or register business in some countries. Some would say they can register a business within a week or 2. Some take some months. And as I read through the various programs, I hear everybody struggling to make sure that they make it easy for you to start a business faster in their country. Except maybe for South Africa and a few other countries. Many countries don't have access to good power supply. In some cases, daily power supply could be as low as 6 hours out of 24 hours on a day. Consequently, businesses are forced to resort to use of generators and other sources. Development of sustainable energy, such as solar, wind, is relatively low. So we have another challenge there. But must that stop us from doing business? No. Capital is also a major challenge, especially when you want to go into a big business. It was interesting when we were here in October last year. Thanks again for Elad. He structured it very well. We met all classes of businesses. And I still remember two gentlemen who were willing to do with the smallest of the smallest. And they would consult for $50. I think that was the figure. You stay there, once you have an email connection with them, and tell them, like this was in a Greek, you talk with them and ask for a solution, and they work out for some days, and you pay $50, and they give you a solution. So this is the mindset of AICC. Big and small will come into the fray. For businesses that could have access to credit, in some cases the interest rates are very high. You know this better than I do. In some countries could be as high as 24%, but we're looking for 1% or 2% or 3%. I'm saying what you already know. According to Transparency International, Corruption Perspective Index of many African countries ranks low. The thing about corruption is that it is two ways, the giver and the taker. If you make up your mind that you will not be involved, you'll not be involved. You won't be involved. I think the secret in this thing is being able to excel in whatever you're doing. When you excel in what you're doing, people will look for you. It's true. And when they look for you, you determine the terms, not they. We found that to work out practically, in my experience. If people identify you as good, then you dictate the terms. And if you decide not to be corrupt, you will not be corrupt. It's a big problem. I know we'll discuss it further. But also those in power recognize this. And some are taking this up as a challenge. They're fighting it frontally. May not be perfect, but they're fighting. They recognize that they are not where they ought to be because of this problem. Again, you can walk outside it. I think at the question time we'll answer some more. The level of technology is low, but that's why there should be development. I remember a project I was involved with in Nigeria. That was a World Bank project some time ago. And I think I was the only Nigerian in the team. The other 8 came from Europe, South Africa, and the rest. And some of my colleagues started complaining. I said, but that's exactly why you came here. This thing was not good, that's why you came. And it affected many of us. At the end, we delivered a very good project. You want to get onto the internet, you are not connecting immediately. Why is it? I said, no, but that's why you're here. And eventually, we delivered a very good project. The infrastructure is not the type you find in Jerusalem. The railways, the waterways, the internet penetration is not what we would like. But that's why we should do it. Where is my inspiration? My inspiration comes from the nation of Israel. When the present nation of Israel was formed some 70 years ago, they encountered this and many more problems. This is largely a desert land, but they did not go back to Europe or Russia, anywhere. They stayed back. We don't have enough water. The engineers thought and gave the world a borehole technology. was largely desert land. We must grow. And they faced the challenge. And now they are exporting agriculture to Europe, America, and other places. Very unfriendly neighbors. That's what we know. And that challenge to develop the military so that every young chap, man or woman, has to be in the military. And of course, the defense capability is far above those around them. So challenges, from AIC point of view, is not something that should make us withdraw. We should identify, see the one we can solve now, and see how we can go around it and still move ahead. That should not be the reason why we should not tap from what my colleague Alat has shown. I've said something about limited water resources, lack of mineral resources when they came. It's only now they have found some oil. What can we do? So AICC has this mentality. In spite of the challenges, we must push on. We cannot fold our hands because there are challenges. Today, the story of Israel has changed significantly to the extent that the nation looks up to Israel for leadership in many areas: agriculture, security, technology, innovations, and the rest. And that's the group we're partnering with. The nation of Israel did not give up in spite of the many challenges it encountered at the beginning and is still encountering today. Similarly, developing business between Africa and Israel in spite of challenges as the inspection of it shall be overcome with strong determination and focus, especially as we believe that the God of heaven is nudging us in this venture. We've heard a lot from the Veja brothers this morning. All what Israel has come to do is because it was written. They will be scattered, they will come back, and they have come back. And they will prosper, and through them the world shall be blessed. It was written. It was also written that in that day there shall be a highway out of Egypt, Africa, to Assyria, Israel, and they shall come together and they shall do business together. Isaiah 19:23. That's in terms of what was written. When we met at the Foreign Affairs last October, we talked with the top government people. We told them that yes, Israel has excelled, there's no question about that. But beyond that analysis mentally, there's something pushing us on to come to Israel. It's of the heart, it's not of the head. And it has to do with the book. So we believe if you as a nation could overcome these challenges, and like was said, I think we were told in that meeting that the Prime Minister had been to Africa 5 times. It never happened. You go to the website, it will say, no, it's now time to go to Africa. But we are forming the platform, the vehicle through which this will be realized. A vehicle, a platform that we are going to sort out, because everybody is afraid of 419, I don't know what to call it here. Fake people. And the IC platform is to sort out those who can make it. So, summary. In spite of the challenges, we will succeed if we are determined, if we persevere. The connection is beyond us. It was written. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uncle Bassi. Um, Also, I'd like to thank you for sticking to time. I think uh, I like that we are leading by example. One of the key things, really, is even if you look in the Bible and you study the Bible, Africa was actually never a beggar continent. We all know that when there was famine here, the Israelites came to Africa. If you study the Bible and you see the resources and minerals that were in Africa, you'll understand that wealth has always been there. And one of the things that as the AICC we discourage is we should not come with a beggar or with a begging bowl mentality. What we are trying to establish as the AICC is a partnership where there is mutual respect between the African business and the Israeli businesses. Otherwise, you can be taken advantage of. And once you go outside of the system or circumvent it for whatever reasons, that's when you can be taken advantage of. And there are a few examples where that has happened. The issues raised by Uncle Bassi, like he said, are not to discourage, but are the reality of what exists on the ground. But because you are forewarned and we know about them, and because of the values of our chamber, we want to create a channel that will succeed despite all these things being there. So thank you very much, Uncle Bassi, for highlighting those. And I believe there will be not just questions, but in our open Q&A session, I think even practical examples of how do we get around some of these things, especially those of us who have this kingdom mandate and a value system which is outside of the Babylonian structure, which is what persists. And we can give real-life examples of how do you go around some of these challenges that you will find in these various countries. All right, coming up next is our first guest from outside. Like I said, Yosef is not a stranger to us, and we welcome you back. And last time, like I said, he was talking about Power Africa. This time he's got a bit more something, I think, more exciting to share with us. He's just asked for 5 minutes, and more of the time will be left for the Q&A session, where I believe you'll definitely have questions for him. Thanks, Yosef.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Your Royal Highnesses, pastors, members of the executive, friends, shalom, all protocol observed. So in 2006, I was hit with this vision that maybe we can make the southern part of Israel, from the historic Red Sea to the Dead Sea, 100% powered by the sun during the day. And everyone said it was going to be impossible. The electric company said maybe 10, 20%. I'm not going to go through all the battles that we had, but I'm really pleased to say that by Passover of next year, from the Red Sea to the Dead Sea, it's going to be powered 100% by the sun during the day. And with that power, of course, comes responsibility. Isaiah taught many things, but two things stand out for me, the prophet Isaiah. The first is, of course, we need to take care of the widow, the orphan, the stranger. You know that. The second is a calling to the Jewish people. Be a light. Be a light. And so what we have built in Israel, it's not just for ourselves, but it's for the peoples of the world. And we have chosen to focus on our neighbors and our friends in Africa. To, as you said before, repayment from the days of the biblical famine. I accept that. But no one had ever done utility scale solar in sub-Saharan Africa successfully before. And you identified the challenges. You identified the fears and the challenges. And so we thought it was very important that someone should succeed. And we built the first utility scale solar in sub-Saharan Africa. We're supplying 6% of Rwanda's power. And we're doing it in an orphan youth village. And so a portion of the proceeds are going to take care of the medical costs of 500 orphans for 25 years. And so in that model, we are looking for partners, full partners, partners of the spirit, partners in the cap table, working partners. We will never understand truly your countries or your people the way you do, right? And so the only way to be able to do this right is to work together. And so what our vision for Africa is actually we want to move the goalposts. We think certainly 100% solar during the day is possible in every single one of your countries, and we are working in those countries. We are making many investments in Africa. The weakest link has to do with the quality of our partners. And you did courageously put corruption on the screen. And for us, we need an alignment of values. We need good people who can solve problems for us. Because the energy companies, traditional energy companies, have corrupted the ethics of decision making. So I'm at a finish line, I'm on the edge of a finish line in a number of countries. And it's very difficult to cross to the finish line. And it's quadruple bottom line. Yes, our investors, they need some return. That's fine, they're not greedy. But we're looking for the humanitarian return. And so are you. You're looking for the environmental return. So are you. You're looking if there's a peace dividend or a development return. So are you. And you're looking for a financial return. And so are you. We need to be aligned on all four. And there are always people in these countries. And we try, and we fight, and we use our diplomatic corps and the US diplomatic corps. So we're looking for partnerships, which is why it was very exciting that I couldn't believe you invited me up. I was here to listen. But we do 100% financing wind and solar. Local costs would like to find a local partner. President Trump is going to announce on October 1st, on Rosh Hashanah, our new year, the $60 billion that will be available for companies like us under the United States Development Finance Corporation. And we're going to allocate that in coordination with our values and with the State of Israel, and with hopefully some new friends from today. So God bless.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Yosef. So like I said, please just keep taking down those questions so that we can have a meaningful Q&A. And then the last presentation is from the Rose Amongst the Thorns. I'd like to invite Viela to please come and do her presentation.
Thank you, Dumi. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Presentation was very well set up by, I think, Uncle Bassi and especially Elad's presentation, because for me, this is a practicalization of everything they've been talking about. Elad was mentioning some of the challenges or some of the advantages that Israel has in the area of technology. And I was taking notes during his presentation because I felt like it just answers, this project answers a few of those, and you'll see as I take you through. So this is called, okay. I think I'll just carry on. We're calling this project the Young African Startup, and it's an incubator. So it's a project that belongs to the Africa-Israel Chamber of Commerce. It is an initiation in partnerships with a couple of companies. We are hoping that we are going to be partnering with Startup Central of Israel, which is the institution that is responsible for the development or taking the culture of startups in Israel to the rest of the world. So they form a very good partnerships for us. Next slide, please. Okay, basically, what is the project idea? It's about incubating young entrepreneurs from Africa. When we say young, we are stretching it a little bit because we are finding a lot of successful businesses are from people who are a little bit older. So we've stretched it to say 18 to 40. And so we're saying that, and these ideas, you have to have a commercially viable idea that is going to tackle some of the most pressing challenges that are coming out of Africa. I think Uncle Basi gave you a very thorough presentation of what are some of the challenges that Africa has. And we're saying if you are young, if you are African, if you have an idea, we want to partner with you to take you to Israel. And the whole idea is really to say, how do we look at each of the sectors of Africa and take a call out to young Africans and saying, do you have an idea, for example, in agribusiness that can solve the food security crisis or at least contribute towards that? Energy, power, we've just heard about Power Africa. Is there anything that any of our young people can do to partner with initiatives of that nature and even their own initiatives? What about water, education, ICT, health, etc.? So what we did is we selected the biggest areas of challenges in Africa, and then we also try to match them with the biggest strengths of the Israeli economy, which I think you gave us quite thoroughly, so that there can be a sweet marriage between what we as Africa and Israel can do together. So this is the basic project idea. Next slide, please. Okay, so the rationale of the project is obviously to tap into this thing that we were told earlier through Elad's presentation. Israel is known to be the #1 startup nation in the world. I mean, they're some of the best R&D or research and development centers for big companies like Microsoft, Google. They're coming to Israel. Some of them are already here, and they also want to tap into this incredible nature or this incredible culture of startups, of young people coming out with fantastic business ideas that have to do with largely technology that literally have the capacity to change the world. And so we're saying we want our entrepreneurs in Africa to come to Israel, to actually be based here in an incubator situation, and they will be taught, or at least get to understand what is it that the Israelis are doing. You know, I think you showed us, I think you call the ecosystem. So we want to tap into that. And so on the other hand, we're saying that what we know about Africa is that we have a very high rate of entrepreneurship. So we have more people, and I think I got this slide from the Africa Economic Outlook, which is a publication of the African Development Bank. And they are saying there that in Africa, there are more people who start a new business than in any other of what is so-called the developing world. So we have the culture of starting businesses in Africa. Another good thing about us is that we have a high rate of innovation. So for example, they tell us that according to research, 20% of African entrepreneurs are not just starting businesses, but they're actually bringing out a new service or a new idea, which means that there is a spirit of entrepreneurship that is taking place in Africa. And then young entrepreneurs, I think we've heard that we are the youngest continent on the planet. We have more young people than anyone. And we are saying, and it apparently, the African businesses or people starting businesses in Africa are very young people. And this is in comparison to other countries, for example, in the developing world. So I think if you look at what Israel is doing and what Africa has, you can already see that there is a very nice match between some of our strengths or the things that are coming out of Africa and what we can tap in working with Israel. Okay, so the project objectives, we basically saying we want to train, we want to equip, we want to empower young people with these ideas to tackle African problems and challenges. I think that was said earlier. But we also want to boost a culture of entrepreneurship and in excellence in solving African problems. So very basically to say, we have issues, we have partners in Israel, how do we come together to solve our issues? Okay, so that was a little bit around what is the idea of the project. So now I'm going to get into a little bit, I'm going to skip some of the slides for the sake of time, but it's really to say, how is this going to work? So please work with me so that if I need to skip some things. So the project mechanics is that we're going to be selecting an initial pilot of about 10 startup businesses. We're looking at 3 African countries. We've selected to start off with South Africa, with 4, Kenya and Nigeria. And we're saying we're going to be setting up an incubator center in Israel, whereby eventually, not on this startup, about 50 candidates, when we are fully rolling this out, will be able to be housed. It'll be a 9-month full-time in Israel as part of the incubator. And then this gives these incubatees an opportunity to actually be based in Israel, going around talking to the various people, entities, organizations, and other entrepreneurs with whom they can learn. And the idea is, how do they take an idea and develop it from just an idea to an actual business? Because one of the things we are learning in Israel, this is happening at a ridiculously fast rate. And it's the same sort of group of young people that are doing those. So we thought, instead of having another startup in Africa, why not bring these young people to Israel to absorb and hopefully get the implantation as well. And so that's what we're going to be doing. And then the last 3 months, the project aims at basically saying, how do we then help them once they've learned how to do or the whole ecosystem, they understand how to take their idea from A, B to C. How do we then help them to find, for example, investors who are going to be investing in their project? How do we make sure that they are ready to actually go into the market and do business? So I'm not going to go into the details of the business model for the sake of time. Now, what are the benefits for the entrepreneurs? Okay, so besides the 9 months in Israel, it gives you exposures to the startup culture. There will be a situation where the incubators will be guided to build a solid team with a mixture of people that have founded the business, but also experts with technical capacity to assist them in the area of their expertise. It's about networking with other Israeli entrepreneurs and potential funders whilst you are based in Israel. And it's about full support and guidance from ourselves as the Africa-Israel Chamber of Commerce and other partners that we may be roping in. We want to give them tools to get their idea and the product ready for market. And they will be given a monthly stipend, roughly speaking. We still yet to finalize the actual financials. And this is really to cover their living expenses whilst we are in Israel. And how we are going to do that, we are going to be looking for partnerships in Israel as well as Africa. For example, we've been speaking to corporates in South Africa, corporates in Kenya, and we haven't yet been to Nigeria, just to get a sense of would the corporate sector, or to what extent will they be able to assist us in this regard. Thank you. And then I'm closing off. So how is this going to be financed? I've just said there's 2 basic ideas. This is about looking at CSI budgets of big corporations in all those 3 countries, and also trying to find out if they're if, for example, they're what they sometimes called angel investors, people who are saying, I like your idea and I'd like to give you money so that you can get rolling, but in return for my investment, I will take a percentage of a share in your company. And that's a very well-known sort of model that is done particularly in the Western world. And America is very good at that. And I think Israel as well. You have a lot of angel support. And so if you are interested, or if you know any young people in your countries that are doing great things, I liked that example of, is it Cloud9? Yeah, that people like that, you know, I'm sure some of you are connected to groups of entrepreneurs, of young people. So please get in touch with us if you, either one of you in here qualify, or you know people that are, or you are in a business network or a church or whatever it is that, so we want to work with people that have been approved, or at least that are known to be doing fantastic things. And that is all from me. Thank you very much. 40. We've said up to 40.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you, Vuyelwa, for your presentation. Please give her another round of applause and everybody else that has presented. Pastor John, I like your enthusiasm. You jumping up and asking about the age thing. I had the same reaction when she said we are stretching youth to stretching it a bit. I thought, yes, I'm going to also qualify as youth, but even at 40, I still miss out. Yeah, 50 is young. I mean, we are believers, so we should be living to about 115, 110. So 50 really should be what we... Anyway, whilst Vuyelwa was presenting, I mean, Yosef here just said to me that this is something that they definitely want to participate in and that they could host the incubation in Israel. So I think already here, we thank God for that already the divine connection is happening. All right, so now we're moving on to our Q&A section. A lot of the details and nitty-gritties of some of the things that we've just touched on here will be discussed at the general meeting that is going to happen after the tea break that I mentioned. And it's simply that you know, obviously there is a lot of work that the AICC has put in to getting to where we are right now. There was a quick mention of the trip that we did last year in October as the AIC board. And some of the people that we met here was the Israeli Africa Chamber of Commerce. We met the Ministry of Economy, their Africa desk. We met the Federation of Israeli Chamber of Commerce. We had a meeting with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we met up with Startup Nation Africa. Now, at the two different chambers of commerce, we had a lot of different companies coming in to present, and these were different size companies who are looking for partnerships with, at a government level, to right down to like a nearly subsistence level type of business. So yeah, so I think because of all that work that has gone to it, it's only fair that, you know, it's the members of the chamber that get to understand exactly how they can benefit from that. So remember, those who are interested and would like to hear more, the usual fee is a $10 registration fee. Then we have a period where we vet you, because it's very important, like Yosef mentioned, there is a lot of business to be done, and there are a lot of people looking for partners in Africa, but it's the caliber and quality of the partners that a lot of businesses struggle with. And this is the general theme that we encountered when we were here last year meeting the different chambers of commerce. And we said what distinguishes us is that we are a Christian chamber of commerce, number one. And number two, that we have a vetting process to ensure that there's somebody who you are accountable to as a business person, whether it's your pastor or somebody who can say, indeed, this is a credible business person. So that process of vetting normally then happens, and then if you're accepted, you then pay a $50 annual membership fee. But today, to allow you access so that you can get to hear in more detail the running of the chamber, all you need to do is pay the $10 registration fee. All right, in terms of questions, we'll go around. Sis Dorcas at the back there has got a mic. So we will take the first round of questions, 5 questions. I'll ask the panelists, please, that if you're asked a question, try and minimize it to a minute and a half, so that we can get through as many questions as possible. If there's any follow-up issues that you'd like to discuss, which I believe you'll do, you can then use the tea break in between the two sessions to exchange context, so that you can then take the conversation further. All right, please may I see through a show of hands any questions? Your Royal Highness here. And yes, it's this.
Thank you very much. I am a royal father from Nigeria, southwest of Nigeria. I have training in agriculture and quite a number of years of experience behind me, administering it, teaching it, and practicing it. So my interest is majorly in agriculture. And my people, the one we call Buga Kingdom, there are lots of unemployed youth amidst a lot of natural resources, which means there is a gap of leadership. When you are saying it should be between, people should be between 18 and 40, I was just thinking inside me. Earlier on, at independence, our leaders hit the top and made their marks at very young age. Google Nigeria is true. But gradually, young people were not given the right opportunities. And you still see 35, 40-year-old young men, graduates, still roaming the streets. Still roaming the streets. So I'm happy that the Africa-Israeli Chamber of Commerce is focusing on the private sector. You see, we had that problem, Engineer Bassel would testify to this, that most of the ones that involve heavy involvement of government never hit the target. There should be very, very minimal governmental intervention if you want it to work. I'm not saying God will not know what we do. We are not criminals. We respect the law, but we don't want unnecessary bureaucracy. Because racism has affected a lot of things in Nigeria. Then the issue of corruption, what have you, I think it's on both sides. If you steal money from my country and I give you to keep it from your country, sorry, and I give you room to save that money in your own country, then you are a collaborator. Abi, no be so. Is it not so? You are a collaborator. So, when the AICC takes root, especially in Nigeria, you will identify people who you will sign MOU that is legally binding. And then you monitor. If you leave a valuable thing in your car and you leave the door of the car opened, somebody is not a thief, may be tempted. So there must be concrete legal procedure. We must steer clear of rentipism. Then the two people that are partners, the people from here and the people you are going to assist, they must hit an agreement that is easily workable, depending on the culture of the two people concerned. And now it concerns money. Everybody has to be interested. The money, the people going to invest in a very fertile ground. I tell you, Nigeria is a very fertile ground. Google it, you will see it. So we are happy to be here. As a traditional ruler, our people trust us even more than government because we are there permanently. We don't go anywhere. And a lot of us are very educated, unlike in the past. Professionals, technocrats. Mention it. Retired army officers and whatever. So there is no area in Nigeria now where you find an illiterate traditional ruler. Very, very rare. So that class of people to which I have the privilege of belonging can be trusted. I can't see a royal father who wants to mess up himself and do disservice to his own community, the people he was ordained to serve. So the problem of probably not getting people reliable there, if you go through the traditional setting, it's minimal. It's minimal. There must be governmental intervention where necessary to get it registered and whatever. But the actual transactions should be taken outside of rentipism if it must work. I want to promise that in Nigeria, the AIC is going to have good business in the southwest because I wake up in the morning, I'm almost 70 now, and I compare the situation when I was young to what it is now. You see, the light is not in the tunnel, and it makes me sad. So if I get an opportunity to rectify as much of such things that I can rectify before time is up, I'll be happy. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency.
History has showed us
It's clear that virtually everything innovation, everything problem and solution is contextual. To what extent is there flexibility in the partnership between Israeli business and the African business, such that the contextual issues of Africa is taken into account in this partnership, so that it's more complementary rather than the other way right there?
Thank you very much. Good question. So so basically you talked about grid connections, right? But I'm curious to know if you also look at off-grid solutions. Because in a lot of African countries, the grids are actually very challenged, and we feel that off-grid solutions could be mini-grid, could be standalone systems, are quicker wins compared to grid connections. Thank you.
For my PhD research work on solar energy system in the rural area, and I can tell you that there are quite a lot of business opportunity in Nigeria, especially in the area of rural. It's quite interesting that you have about 6% of the Rwanda power system. If you really want to get more than that, you can get that in Nigeria. I am aware of the fact that the renewable energy plan for Nigeria has much more than that. There's a plan on that. But the challenge, like you have said, is how to really get it across in the area of getting the partners that will be willing to work that together. And in any way that you think we can work together, I'll be willing and ready to facilitate that. I know quite a lot of communities that are interested in doing that. And thank you very much.
My question is, what are your young entrepreneurs doing to protect their intellectual property in the global space? And might there be an opportunity for us to partner with you in helping your young business men and women protect their IP in the global economy?
Are you talking to AICC or talking to Israel?
I'm talking to the African Israel Chamber of Commerce, the entrepreneurs within Africa. Yes.
Thank you. Very good question. All right, let's get some answers from the. No, I do mind. Let us go. Let us answer the things quickly. Elad, the first question is about the flexibility in terms of Israeli businesses who to understand the context of doing business with Africa. Because I think to have a template where you say we're going to go out and do business without having the ability to be flexible, to deal with the nuances of different African markets can be a challenge. So how flexible are they?
Okay. I'll try and just summarize a few of the things and hopefully answer also the other questions and to refer to the comments that I heard. First of all, when you spoke about corruption and government or trying to avoid the government, I think, and it was common to all of us speaking here, was our willing to or looking for working individual to individual, entrepreneur to entrepreneur, without trying to solve the biggest issues of Africa, try to get small wins, small successes, and take it step by step. I don't think we're going to solve the whole issues that we saw, the problems or that Africa might have. So staying away from government and from regulation and from other issues would be much healthier. Regarding the question of the flexibility of the entrepreneurs, I think I mentioned it in my presentation that naturally the startups in Israel or the technology that is developed here is naturally made for the Western world. And that's where, but understanding that there is still a huge and untapped potential in Africa. And that's where we need you and we need the partners and looking for equal partners as was mentioned here as well, equal partners to work together on the specific challenges of Africa. As was mentioned, we don't know better than you what exactly are the needs, the local needs, the adaptation that needs to be done, and that's what we want to do with you. And it's quite easy to be done when we speak about the digital space and programming and technology. In many cases, we get a question of teach us how to do it, or just sell us something or whatever. And the answer is always that it's not off-the-shelf solution that you can just buy or implement or do it, copy it or whatever, and do it immediately in Africa. It is a challenge because it's a whole circle, as I showed, of an ecosystem that was built over 70 years that involves many institutions, and we have to do it step by step. But only this way you can succeed, when you have all of these elements working together.
That's a very easy one for me. The answer is an absolute yes. I think the whole issue of intellectual property in Africa, it's a big problem because we have a situation, especially like, I don't know, I know the cases in South Africa where young people will be pitching their ideas to big corporations, and like a lot of the time, the ideas get stolen. I mean, even simple things like design and you know, for simple things like bags and shoes, people take their ideas and they run away. And I don't think we have a very clear and sort of understood process of doing it. So for me, I would say absolutely yes. It's something that as AICC would love to, in fact, I would love to talk to you further about that. So thank you for that offer.
The off-grid versus the on-grid, and it's basically the two questions here. Again, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. Whatever I don't get to answer, I'm happy to stay in the tea break. One of my partners, Dr. Nan Greer, is over there too, and she'll be able to also take your questions. Remember Isaiah? I was talking about the most vulnerable people, and so what I'm interested in is not necessarily light for the sake of light. I'm interested in productive use, right? Because productive use can lift people's economic status and can lift dignity. Now, when you want to hit scale, unfortunately, you do need some government because we do project finance. I saw your slide on there, right? We 70% debt, 30% equity. Now, we are experimenting with some pilots, mini-grids. We're willing to do private large off-takers in Nigeria. I think that's gonna happen. We've been stuck in Bauchi for 8 years at the finish line in northern Nigeria on 100 megawatts that will transform that region. And we're just waiting for President Buhari to name the energy minister. The election was quite some time ago, so I don't know if you have any say in that. I'm hoping to meet the president at the UN General Assembly. I think if you're looking for us just in terms of home systems, it's not us. There are other companies, there's other Israeli companies I'm happy to connect. But if you're looking for productive use where there's enough megawatts in the overall system one way or the other, it could be a local disco, for example. It could be a municipality. We're willing to be creative with you. It's just based on the quality of the relationships, exactly what we were talking about before. Then we would be honored to be able to look not just at the large scale, but at a community-based, something that Nan taught me, electric sovereignty for certain regions. But it has to be your lands. And so we're counting on you to be able to help us legally and tribally with those rights, Your Highness, to answer your question.
All right, thanks. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, our time has really gone, and one of the guests that we had mentioned that they will be speaking to us, being Marcel Shaman. She is not new to the Africa Israeli Chamber of Commerce and the ALS. She's just arrived. She's from the South African Israeli Chamber of Commerce, and she's just asked for a few minutes just to share what she's been up to since we were last here.
Thank you. Thanks very much. It's really great to be here. Good afternoon, Pastor Shagan, distinguished guests, friends from the Africa-Israel Chamber of Commerce, and also the Institute for Christian Leadership Development. I was delighted when Pastor Shagan asked me to speak for a few minutes on Israel's business climate and its meaning for Africans. I know that I'm pretty late, so I don't want to keep you too much, but essentially when I started thinking, okay, what would I talk about? I thought as an introduction, you know, there's that picture of, it's a medieval map of basically a flower. It's a flower, a clover flower. It was put together by a theologian who was a pastor, a German pastor, and essentially it's got Jerusalem in the middle. It's got a petal in the east, the west, and the south. And essentially, it also copies, or basically the shape is a symbol of the Trinity, the Christian Trinity, which is also, comes from a place in terms of God is one, but there is also the tri-part in terms of, you know, the concept of persons in terms of the flower. So I just wanted to say it is a symbol in terms of oneness. It's also fantastic that we're in Jerusalem today, and we want to look in terms of partnerships. As mentioned, the background, I was a labor lawyer in South Africa in the late 80s, early 90s, came over here, became an advocate, specializing in taking companies public, and then went into investment banking. And today, besides, okay, I chair the Israel-South Africa Chamber of Commerce, but I run a venture called Anthill, which Anthill initially started off with its mission to actually put or bring technologies into Kenya, package it with finance and opportunities. And what I saw was really that what African opportunities or businesses are needing is finance. That's what they need. They need money. And it's not necessarily the best of the best breed technologies that you have to be bringing them. So I set about putting Anthill, changing its mission in terms of an investment banking firm for the emerging markets, especially Africa, and on technologies, Israeli technologies. As far as I thought I would address you, but I really don't want to keep you too long. I thought to break down the address to two parts. One is in terms of the outside coming in to Israel and connecting with Israel. And when you actually connect with Israelis, you find a completely different business culture. Whereas indeed, you have a situation whereby it's a favorable environment, climate for doing business. One tends to have a need to see Israelis as pretty forward-thinking entrepreneurs, startup nation, etc. With that, there's also the fact of them being extremely assertive, I may say aggressive, and the business culture is very different. I find that also in terms of my experience, in terms of Africa and Israel and connecting between the different cultures. And I would say one of the things as far as the startup nation or Israelis are concerned was the issue of adversity. And adversity definitely has an aspect in terms of you becoming a mother of necessity, in terms of being the mother of invention. So I think the business culture is an important thing in terms of looking as far as coming and doing successfully in Israel or being successful in Israel. But looking out, which I think I need to definitely relate to, and I was looking up some statistics. Indeed, half of the world's fastest growing economies are located in Africa. But if you look in terms of African economies, they constitute a very, very tiny segment of Israeli exports on that aspect, okay? Exports, for example, to the US amount to $1.7 billion annually. Exports to Africa only amount to $46 million a year, including diamonds. If I have to look at agriculture, we know the situation in Africa. I mean, Africa could really be the breadbasket of the world. There's huge opportunity in terms of bringing in technologies from Israel. For that to happen, indeed, you're going to have a situation not only of coming to Africa and giving or selling or bringing your agribusiness technologies, but also policymakers definitely need to focus on offering significant support to the agricultural sector. We talk about water similarly in terms of the need for irrigation in sub-Saharan Africa with the use of archaic technologies and techniques. Here too, Israel has great water technologies, but it's going to need a situation whereby you're going to have the need for investment. We look at Africa in terms of its burgeoning populations, etc. The developed markets indeed have become completely saturated. So here we are talking about Africa. There's huge opportunity, huge need, and huge potential. And that goes also to financial technologies, which I've got plenty statistics, but I won't bore you too much in terms of those statistics. There has recently been a situation where if you look at it, Israel has said, and you've seen Prime Minister Netanyahu's approach as far as bringing the Israel and Africa closer together. I think Israel has been, to a large extent, involved in Africa for a long time. But here, yes, you're seeing openings of new missions, new embassies. Recently, there was one that was opened in Rwanda, in Kigali. I mean, you're also seeing companies that have jumped on the bandwagon in terms of engaging and investing. Netavim just signed a $66.5 million deal with the Rwandan government. There's a South African AECI subsidiary partnering with a startup here in terms of AI, agribusiness or agri-tech company. Coca-Cola is nearing the completion of buying South African food company Clover. Yeah, we do hope something like that will go through. And as I said, on a government level, we are told that the current government's drive is to re-engage. Recently, there were representatives here from Ethiopia, which came and they echoed the same sense. You see Ethiopia, just as a microcosm of what's going on in Africa, is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and yet you have Chinese, Turkish, etc. going into Ethiopia, and there's the point being made that Israelis are investing, but they need to invest more substantially. I've had various experiences, so I'll stop the talk in terms of markets, etc. I've had various experiences in terms of my work in Africa. One of the stark examples that I had was the fact that indeed need for more investment from Israel if one is to capitalize on investment. So a while back, there was a fund called Vital Capital Fund. They raised about $800 million, and they brought money to a place in southern Angola called Wakakungu. What they did was they actually created an integrated, vertically integrated farm establishment there. And honestly, it was amazing to see when I went to Angola, where you saw people that were living and subsisting on $1, which had changed into $100. You saw a person suddenly being able to lease a car, banks coming into an area. So it started a whole microcosm in terms of towns. One thing I would definitely say in terms of my experience also is the fact of people with technologies or people with opportunities don't come like a beggar, because your opportunity, I really believe, is as good as the money. I really believe that. We need good opportunities. Arrogance, I've seen huge amounts of arrogance that just kills relationships and deals. Another thing, Africa is really making her own money. Funds in Africa, that's where I target, because where you're not finding, let's say, access to funding from Israel, you're going to find other funds either in Europe, either in Africa, South Africa. And Israel can also, which is very interesting, you may not have a situation where you've got a bilateral relation in terms of Israel and African countries, but you may have a situation where Israel serves, and that's the flower, where Jerusalem or Israel serves as the springboard to actually connect you to other markets, which is very important. We did a venture with East Africa's largest investment house, which connected them with an Israeli group here in agricultural exports. It wasn't that the East Africans or Kenyans were looking for money. They had money, but they wanted exposure to market, and yes, a bit of technology. Technology from Israel, indeed, some amazing technologies, but there are, of course, others out there, and you may have a situation where African technologies are suited for Africa. You just have to be looking at what there is there and what is the most suitable. On a more public level, so as I say, what I think, just like with my business, the Africa-Israel Chamber of Commerce, you have a situation where there's really a need to look in terms of who are your members, who's your audience, and who are you playing to. That's really important. The Israel South Africa Chamber of Commerce was birthed in 1973 on the eve of the economic conference, which was given by Golda Meir. And at that time, she said that trade fosters dialogue. So at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, I think it all starts with people. Pastor Shagan knows how to get hold of me as a proud South African and Israeli. I'd like to build on the event. Please feel free to contact me, to contact the chamber. Yeah, we'd love to collaborate more. So thank you for your time and apologies for taking your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcel. Once again, I'd just like to thank Marcel and the Israeli South Africa Chamber of Commerce. Like I said, you were here when this idea was conceived, and I remember I personally have been in touch with you back in 2016, I believe, 15, after my visit here, and we were discussing agro-processing. So we'd like to really thank you, and may you continue to be a resource that we can call upon. Being half African and half Israeli, I think you are the perfect bridge for what we are trying to do.